Hi guys, welcome back. We got the FX Impact M3 right here, my big boy. Now, the FX Impact is in my opinion the most advanced air rifle on the market as of today. Also, in my opinion, it's the most modular one that exists out there. And with modular, I mean you can always replace different parts on the Impact to meet up with the standards and the new technology FX brings every day to the new platform. And therefore, I think this is the best gun in the world, because you can buy an Impact a few years back, every year spend a few bucks, upgrade the different pieces and bring your gun up to standard, not needing to buy the new gun that is released that year, which is pretty awesome. Now, the only thing of the modularity is that it exists out of many different components, our Impact. And therefore, you need to seal all those different compartments and you need a ton of O-rings to do this. Now, O-rings have the nature to fail over time. Sometimes one of them goes and you have a leak. Many people are contacting me that they have a problem, and I always try to help out everybody fixing the leaks on their Impacts and trying to get their gun back up to speed. Now, I know the Impact sometimes can look a little bit intimidating, taking everything apart, taking the power block and the Plenum apart in order to change a few O-rings to stop a leak. But I have a video that I have done quite a while back, disassembling the complete M3, putting it back together, so you can follow there if you want, in order to fix one of your problems. I compare the FX Impact with a, let's say, a high-end race car on the circuit. It has to be in top condition in order to perform well. The same with your FX Impact, it has to be in top condition in order to perform well. And therefore, you have to do from time to time some care and maintenance on it. And that means taking some stuff apart, changing some O-rings. And this is not your everyday beginner's gun, of course. And that's where a lot of people, I think, get frustrated when one of those O-rings fails. Now, I've taken my gun apart several times. I don't know already how many times. I can probably do it blindfolded. And at first it looks very intimidating, but if you have done it a few times, it just takes, I think, 15 minutes to take it completely apart and another 15 minutes to put it back together. So changing out an O-ring to fix a leak is not really an issue. So as I mentioned, many people are contacting me in order to help them out with their problems, and I'm always happy to do so. But I thought by myself, why don't I make a video with every possible spot on the FX Impact that can have a leak and how you can fix it, and therefore help many others than just the few people that are contacting me. We got a lot to cover, so let's get started. So in this video, I'm going to use my FX Impact M3. Normally I don't have many troubles with O-rings because I take my guns apart frequently and replace O-rings that I think need replacing at that moment, and therefore I barely have any trouble. But recently this one has developed a very small leak, which is about 1 to 3 bar every 24 hours, and those are the hardest ones to find and to eliminate, of course. So in this video I'm going to go through all the different spots on my FX Impact in order to find that leak, as well as providing with you the information how to fix leaks in other spots. Recently I see many people, in order to find those very tiny leaks, dumping their whole gun into a bucket of water to see where the leak originates from. And it just gives me the shivers. Why the hell would you want to put your gun in a bucket of water, take it out? Okay, they probably blow it out with an air compressor, but still water gets trapped in small spots, makes corrosion over time, and then the problems keep on coming with other stuff in other places. So please stop putting your guns into water. Another good solution, or another better solution to find leaks, is with some soapy water. And soapy water works very well, but for those tiny small leaks, soapy water sometimes isn't good enough. So my biggest tip for you today is get you one of something like this, and that's gas detector spray, and it even reacts to the tiniest, smallest amounts of air that is escaping. You straightly see it bubbling, and you don't have to put it in water, you don't have to use soapy water, you can use it really specifically in certain areas and keep the rest of your gun clean. So get you one of these, and it will make your life a whole lot easier. So before you start off hunting down the leak on your air gun, it's always advisable to fill it up to its max capacity. Probably it will be 250 bar, so let's see where mine is. It's right at 244 bar, which is perfect. Reason why I do that is because some tiny leaks, some of you may have noticed that you start losing air out of your bigger cylinder till a certain amount of pressure, and there it stops. So the tiny amount of air leaks that you have can stop at a certain air pressure level, and therefore if you air it up to its max capacity, you have the biggest chance of finding it. The first spot where we will start is with the barrel and the valve, which is pretty easy to do, and a good trick to find out is with a simple balloon. You take it and put it over your barrel, just like this. The balloon will seal off your barrel from the front, and I have tested this on mine already when I before I had the idea of making this video. After some time, when you have a small leak or sometimes a bigger leak, you will see this balloon blowing up. The reason why it blows up is because air chooses the easiest path, of course, and that is down the barrel. Because the problem, if this balloon blows up, is probably your valve that is not closing 100%. Probably the valve is not sitting perfectly in the valve seat, letting some air pass through the barrel, pass through the transfer port up. And the reason why it will travel down your barrel is because your probe sits in an O-ring inside your barrel, and air chooses, like I said, the easiest path or the path of less resistancy, and therefore blow up the balloon. So this is always a very nice way to find out if your valve is leaking or not. And in some occasions it's one of the O-rings on the valve housing that fails, letting the air sneak through and come out up to the transfer port into the barrel and bleed out that way. Fixing your valve is probably replacing the whole valve stem in your FX Impact, taking it completely apart. So again, I refer to my video where I disassembled and completely reassembled it. You can follow it step by step how to get to your valve as well. So now we have determined that our valve is not leaking and air is not coming out of our barrel. We'll focus our attention to the back part here, mainly the plenum with the valve housing itself. When we take a look at the back of the magazine well, you see this silver part right here at the back with that small round in the middle, and that's actually your valve stem with a very tiny O-ring at the back that seals off the back part right here. So also here, spray a bit of your leak detector spray, and in my case there is no problem at all. When we take a closer look at the silver part, you can also see the bigger ring, and the bigger ring is actually your valve housing that connects to your power plenum. Now on the M3, the valve housing has some O-rings on the outside that can fail, and then your air will leak out right here in your magazine well on the outer side of that silver ring, or between your block and your plenum itself. On the newer models with the power block installed, the O-rings are actually inside the power block, and then you have to inspect those O-rings when you experience a leak from the outer side of that silver part right here, or between the power plenum and the block itself. So let me quickly check those areas as well. Nothing. And again here, also nothing. Perfect. Now, the plenum itself runs all the way through and ends up in a neck, a small thinner part that connects to the main body. On the outside of that neck on the main body, there are two O-rings. And those two O-rings, in the middle of those O-rings, there's a tiny hole which connects with your regulator that sits behind your trigger right there, which feeds air up into that little hole into your plenum. When you're experiencing a leak that comes here from underneath your barrel, in the opening that you tighten with the screw you see right there, then it means that one of those O-rings fails and the air passage from the regulator to your power plenum, there is an issue. There are two O-rings, as I just mentioned, on the outside of the neck, so that's one you have to check as well. And by me, no bubbles occurring, so I'm good to go right there, and I know that the two O-rings on the outside of the neck are fine. The power plenum also has a cap that seals off at the front right here, screwing into the main body of your plenum itself. On the inside of the screws right there, there is a big O-ring, and that big O-ring seals out your cap to the main body of your plenum itself. Spraying a little bit of the leak detector spray. No bubbles occurring, so I know the cap that seals off my plenum has no leaks, and I'm good to go right there. In the neck of that plenum, you have two tiny O-rings, a white one and a black one. Those sit right in the neck of that plenum, and your valve rod that runs from the front of your valve adjuster all the way to the back runs through those O-rings, and these O-rings seal off your plenum. And some people were asking me questions. I have an air leak behind my power wheel, and that's your problem. The two O-rings inside the neck probably failed, and the air is coming out of the neck behind your power wheel, and that's why some people experiencing or thinking they have a leak behind their power wheel. It's not behind their power wheel, it actually originates from your plenum. So taking it apart, replacing the two O-rings in the neck should fix your leak that originates behind your power wheel. And for the power plenum, that's just about it. So to recap, you have your valve stem right at the back with O-rings on the outside or on the inside in the case of the power block that you need to have to check. Then you have the neck of the power plenum with two O-rings on the outside if you experience a leak from the top right there, or if you're experiencing a leak from behind your power wheel or your quick adjust tune system, then it's the two O-rings inside that neck. Then continuing from the back side, the M3 has a few gauges. The M2 or the Impact X, whatever, has a little bit less gauges, but the M3 has a gauge underneath. I have the side angle manometer bracket. You have a gauge for your bottle, and you have a gauge for your first stage regulator. Those of course can leak as well, so it's as simple as just removing the covers and then checking with your leak detection spray underneath the gauges to see if you see any bubbles occurring and if your leak might occur from right there. To fix the leak on these gauges is actually pretty simple. As well, the gauge at the back as the gauge at the front, there is an X-ring behind it. And sometimes when people put the gauges too tight, I never put them too tight, I just put them hand tight. Then when you put them too tight, those X-rings can't expand into all the voids and seal off nicely, and sometimes you have a small leak occurring from right there. The easy fix is just empty out the whole system out of air, and this you have to do when you want to fix any of these issues. Completely take all the air out of your system before you do any work on it, of course, and just replace those X-rings on the side. In case of the side angle manometer bracket, there is a tiny white, I think, Delrin washer behind it that squashes when you put the gauge inside and seals that way. If you have a leak from there, you can always replace that tiny white Delrin washer. The gauge on the other side is a little bit different story, as it's just a flat hole that is milled into the side of that block, and there is no O-ring underneath, but it has these how do I call it, brass washers right behind it that seal off all the rest. And the same process applies there. Just check it with your leak spray and see if your problem occurs from there. So with your power plenum checked and all your gauges checked and your valve checked, it's time to move on if you didn't find your leak just yet. What should we address? Let's see. Now, here on this side, just above your grip, there is a small plug. And if you take a closer look, right there next to your bottle adapter, there is also a small brass plug. These plugs are made in order to drill certain areas into your block for air to pass through, and they had to block it off. So they blocked it off with two of those plug screws with a tiny O-ring underneath. So if you're experiencing a small leak from there, at these holes, so let me quickly check by myself. No problems there. Just undo that plug once your system is out of air. I can't stress it enough. Only work on your air gun when it's out of air. Just take those screws out. Replace the little O-ring underneath, and you should have your problem fixed. Don't over tighten. I once had somebody contacting me they just tighten it even more and more and more, stripped out the screws, and that's a very big headache to get that screw out once you strip that head. So take them out gently, replace the O-ring underneath, and you should be good to go. Now, moving a little bit forward, I have on my M3 this angled manometer bracket, but normally underneath this bracket, or I think it also applies for the Mark II and the other one, there is a small tiny hole in the middle. The only thing, the M3 has 2 extra mounting screws, and there is a small little hole. That is actually your venting hole for your regulator. I think they call it an atmospheric venting hole, and this also might be an issue. The O-ring you need to check is the O-ring all the way down at the bottom of your second regulator. Taking your regulator out, looking into that hole, all the way down, there is a big O-ring that sits there. If this one fails, you might have an air leakage right there from that atmospheric regulator pressure. Also check the O-rings on the outside of your regulator housing, of course. The second thing here you have to check is a small dog point screw that blocks off the air passage through the side angle manometer bracket. It's just there so it can let the air pass through that bracket into the gauge that you mount there on the side. It's just a simple screw that blocks off the hole. Normally you don't have any issues with it, but it's always good to check while you're busy hunting for leaks. General rule of thumb: when having a leak that has to do with your regulator and you take it out anyway, it's best to service it and change out all the O-rings for new ones. Speaking about the regulator, that's your next spot you want to check, behind your trigger right there. The O-rings on the regulator sometimes can fail due to a various amount of circumstances. Mostly it's the one on the adjustment screw. From turning it in and out, that tiny O-ring on that small piston that wears out. But in my case, I'm still good to go right there. Then in the case of the M3, we also have our second regulator between the bottle and the main block, as you see right there. Now on the Mark II, you just have the adapter, but it applies more or less in the same way. In the Mark II, when you just have the normal bottle adapter without the first regulator inside, there is an O-ring that seals between the block and that adapter, and that's something you can check, same as with the M3. But again, in my case, that's no problem. And I'm starting to wonder where my tiny leak is. So it's not there. Because on the M3, and this only applies for the M3, you have a regulator in that bottle adapter. There is also a small vent hole for that regulator. So let me quickly locate it. And it's right here at the bottom by me. So we also need to check if the O-rings on that regulator are doing fine. And I think I found my small leak. It's popping out small, tiny air bubbles. Really cool. So I found my tiny leak, and I'm not really worried how to fix this, because it could be just as simple as tightening that bottle adapter just a little bit more. And if this doesn't help it, then you can take that bottle adapter out and you can start assessing the O-rings on that bottle adapter. When you have the bottle adapter, there is one that seals against the main block. There is a smaller one behind it to seal the piston. And sometimes when the adapter is not tied strong enough, the piston just has a little bit too much room, and therefore the air can escape from your atmospheric pressure hole. When you have a problem with your regulator, probably the best idea is to completely take that regulator apart and see if all the O-rings are okay. Another spot you might want to check once you're in that spot is the neck or the valve between your bottle and the valve of your bottle itself. Sometimes the O-ring in between can give out, but that all seems to be fine, and it's just that atmospheric pressure hole that is giving me a little bit of grief. So the bottle is also fine, And with all that checked, I think we're almost near to the end. And there is still one important part that many people often forget, and that's your fill port. Your fill port, inside the fill connection, there is a small valve stem with an O-ring inside. So once you take out your fill source, the air in the bottle or in the housing will push on that valve stem and close off your male Foster connection. So simply turn your gun around. No problems there. For a second I thought I saw some air bubbles, but no, that's all fine. If you should have a problem there, it's a very simple fix. Take off your trigger guard, take all the air out of your system, undo the adapter connection, and you will see inside the adapter connection there is that piston with that O-ring on it. Just replace that O-ring and you should be good to go. So guys, I'm happy I found my leak in the atmospheric breathing hole of the first regulator, and right after I finish video I will quickly fix it and I don't have to worry anymore where this 1 to 3 bar goes to. I hope I didn't forget anything. I think I covered all the sides that seal with the most important O-rings to keep all the air in the system. If you have any questions, as always, please put them in the comment section down below. You can also hit me up on Instagram if you want, if that is more preferable for you and maybe a little bit more straight connection. As always, please don't forget to like, subscribe to this video and my channel so we can grow it and even become a little bit more bigger and I can do some more special projects. I thank you for watching and I hope to see you back in the next one. Bye!